Hello everyone and welcome back. We will be looking at the third lesson in the series for the topic industry. So what we're going to do today is we are going to look at the different factors that affect a location of a factory. Now, before someone decides to build a factory, they need to look at the area around to see whether it's the ideal place for them to build a factory. But what is it that they look at? So this is what we will be looking at today. So first, is there enough raw materials? So whatever the factory will be about, they need to see whether there is enough raw materials in the area that they will need. For example, if it is an industry that deals with fishing, so are they going to be based in a desert or in an area near a coast? Because near the coast, they are closer to the raw materials. Okay? The next thing is the raw material affordable? Obviously, if you want to make the maximum profit, the input that you want to have in your factory will be affordable. So, of course, you're going to choose an area where the raw material will be affordable. So the third factor is whether there are natural land or sea route for speedy transportation of raw materials and finished products. So when we're talking about land or sea route, we are talking about whether there are motorways, roads, railway tracks, train tracks. And when we're talking about sea route, we are talking about whether there are ports in the area so that the factory can easily access its raw material, and whatever finished product that they have, they can easily transport it to their market. Another factor that they need to consider is whether there is access to the market to sell the product. So once you're done with your product, obviously you need to sell it. So where the factory is, can it get access to the market? So obviously you need to build your industry or your factory in an area where there's ease of transportation, when you can easily access people, where you can easily access market to sell the product. Another thing is, what is the cheapest form of transportation? So if you need to access your market, obviously you need to find the cheapest way to access the market, the cheapest form of transportation. Is it by ship? Is it by plane? Is it by train? So you have to find the easiest and the cheapest way to transport your goods. Another thing that you can think about is whether there will be enough workers in the area. So if you have a factory that needs a lot of workers, obviously you cannot be located in a small village in a rural area. You need to be located somewhere where people can easily come to your industry, come to your factory for them to work. So you need to be located in an area close to a residential area where you can have a lot of people coming in. Okay, the next factor that we need to look at is whether the workers in the area have the necessary skill that you need them to have. If you have a very high-tech industry that works with a lot of technologies, then people in the area where you set up your industry, they need to be tech savvy, which means they need to know how to work the technology you have in your companies. So it is important that you assess the skill level of people before you can set up your industry in a particular area. So when you set up your company or your industry, you need to assess which source of power is affordable or which source of power that you can easily get access to. So if you are a company or an industry or a factory that needs to rely on a lot of electricity, you need to ensure that you set your company or your factory in an area where power supply is reliable, okay? Reliable and also cheap. The next one is whether there is capital available for investment in an area. Having capital is one of the most important inputs when you want to set up a factory. So obviously, you need to ensure that if you want people to invest, you need to set up in an area where people can afford to invest in your company. So the last factor that we're going to look at are the kind of government policies or incentives that exist in the area. For example, when we talk about government policies, we are talking about what kind of energy supply that the government allows you to use in that country, or what kind of products are legal that you can use. And when we're talking about incentives, does the government exempt you from certain taxes? So all this someone needs to consider when deciding where to build a factory. So before we move on, we'll just recap what we've learned. So the factors influencing the location of industries, the location of raw materials, the affordability of those raw materials, land and sea route for cheap and speedy transportation of the raw materials and finished products, access to market, power supply, if there is enough skilled labor in the area, if there's capital for investment in the business, and whether there are government policies and incentives in place in the area. So next, what we are going to do, we are going to use everything that we've looked at so far, such as industry as a system, and the different factors that affect the location of an industry, and we are going to look at a motor vehicle manufacturing industry. So, a motor vehicle manufacturing industry is usually a complex transnational industry. A transnational industry involves a lot of processes. First of all, research and development. So when we talk about research and development, we're looking at if there's new models, fuel efficiency, and whether their products will be environmentally friendly. It involves also production and raw materials, the manufacture of components, for example, different parts that goes together to form one final product. There's also car manufacturing or assembly, then putting together the car parts. Marketing and distribution is very important in a transnational industry. And finally, sales, service, and parts. So we're going to have a better look at all these components when we look at the case study that we're going to do. So the case study that we're going to look at is the Toyota Motor Corporation. So I know Toyota is a brand that you are all familiar with. So let's look at the background a little bit. So Toyota Motor Corporation is the world's biggest car manufacturer. So it's the 6th largest company in the world by value of its sales. And it conducts business with over 51 overseas manufacturing industries in 26 different countries around the world. However, the core production of Toyota Motor Corporation is in Toyota City, Japan. So we're just going to look at a map first. As you can see, this is the country of Japan, and it is just next to North Korea, South Korea, and Russia in the Pacific Ocean. And there's actually a city that's called Toyota City, where the core business of Toyota is. Now, like I've mentioned, they conduct business all around the world. So as you can see from this map, they have businesses all around the world. The red one shows the regional headquarters. So we've got some close to Japan, and then we've got in United States and Europe. And then we've got the designing and R&D centers. So those are distribution centers. So that is all over the world, once again, in Asia, in Europe, and in North America. And then the manufacturing companies, this is also worldwide. As you can see in black on the map, they have companies all over the world. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to look at the inputs of the factory. So capital, like I mentioned before, if you want to start a business, capital is a must. So why do Toyota need capital? This is for complex and efficient machines for mass production, and of course, investment in research, development, and marketing. So they need money for that. So the second factor that we're going to look at is raw materials. Now, long ago, it was necessary for industries to be located next to their raw material, but this is no longer the case. So for Toyota, it has 12 separate factories in Toyota City, which work together to make the different components and assemble the different parts. Now, the main raw material is steel, and that is produced in a city nearby called Nagoya. Labor, so obviously it is a factory, it needs labor. So Toyota employs over 300,000 people around the world. And those people, they need to be highly skilled and educated to operate production lines. Workers with engineering background are an advantage. And there's also high intensive staff training programs for employers, because as they develop new technology, they need to train their staff how to manipulate those new technologies. So land is also necessary. Now they need large areas of flat land so that they can build production lines and also for vehicle storage. So this is in east coast of Japan mainland, a place called Honshu. As you can see from this picture, this is the area where they have their production line. It is quite a large area because they need to have places to store the cars they are manufacturing. We move on. Market. So market is important. So Toyota needs to be located in an area where they have to have access to people who are able to buy their vehicles. And these are mainly in places that are NICs. If you remember the topic in S3, NICs are newly industrialized countries, and also places with large population, such as USA, Thailand, and China. If we go back to the map, we will see that on continents such as North America, Europe, and Asia, there are a lot of manufacturing companies because there's a large market there. If we take a look at continents such as South America and Africa, there's less manufacturing industries there because the market for the product is less. So less people are buying the Toyota products such as cars and other vehicles. So therefore, there's less manufacturing companies there. So the next one is political influence. So what Toyota find out is that it is cheaper for manufacturers to transport components to a country because of high taxation level on finished products. So instead of exporting a finished product such as a car or a van, what they do is that they export components, and in that particular country, the companies will assemble the products. So this costs them less. The next thing is assembly factories are set up in many countries, and this provides employment and stimulates economy. So the different car components that is transported to a country gives employment to people as they assemble the cars. So a lot of countries, they welcome Toyota branches in their country as they know it will provide employment to their people, and also it will stimulate the economy. So when it comes to the process, the main two processes are production of steel and other parts for the cars, and also assembly of car parts. And the output, of course, motor vehicles such as cars, vans, hybrid, trucks, etc., and capital. In 2019, it was estimated that Toyota made a profit of $272 billion. So as you can see, it is a very profitable company. So let's just recap what we've learned for today. First of all, what is a transnational company? Let's see if you remember. So the answer is already in the word, transnational, which means that it is a company that conducts business all over the world. And what is the name of the company that we learned about today? Let's see if you remember. That was the Toyota Motor Corporation. Where is its main core operation center? So where is the main core operation center of Toyota Motor Corporation? And that's in Toyota City, Japan. The next question, what are the inputs of the company? Let's see if you remember the different inputs. Capital, money for investment, for development and research. Raw materials like steel, labor, highly skilled labor. Okay, so land, market, and political influence. Now, what are the processes of the company? There were only two: production of car parts and assembly of car parts. And finally, what are the outputs of the company? Motor vehicles and capital. So at home, what you can do, you can research other transnational manufacturing industries around the world. It doesn't have to be a motor vehicle company. It can be any other technological company or anything else. And you can give the lesson to your teacher to see whether you are on the right track. So I thank you for the lesson for today, and I will join you next time for the last lesson in the series. Thank you.